Yes, it's true. If you're watching this video, you're probably waiting for the M1X MacBook Pro or some other future Apple computer to come sweep in and solve all of your computing needs. But is that really the right choice for most of you? Well, actually it isn't, and I think a lot of you should stop waiting for the M1X MacBook Pro and just purchase an M1 MacBook Pro. Just like you should stop using your personal debit cards and banking information online and start using our sponsor for this video, Privacy.com, which lets you buy things online using virtual cards instead of having to use real ones, protecting your identity and your banking information. And right now, new customers will automatically get $5 to spend on their first purchase by going to privacy.com/Greg'sGadgets to sign up now. Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and I know I'm just gonna get a lot of flack for this video because there's a lot of you out there that think you need the best, most expensive, most powerful laptop out there. Don't worry, I've been there before, I'm not judging any of you, and for some of you, waiting for the M1X MacBook Pros is going to be the wrong choice. Now, yes, to be fair, some of you should wait for the M1X MacBook Pros. I'm going to cover that all in that video, but I think the vast majority of people watching this video should stop waiting and just purchase an M1 MacBook Pro today. Because let's face it, it's July and so many of us are going back to work or going back to school. Sorry about that, kids. And possibly you're about to enter your first year of college or university, or maybe you're thinking about just starting something where you need a laptop, like a YouTube channel, and you need a laptop, you want a Mac, and you need one right now. Getting the M1 MacBook Pro is going to be the right choice. So why should I listen to you, Greg? What criteria should I be looking for when purchasing an M1 Mac today? And why is the M1 MacBook Pro specifically the correct choice? So, like the MacBook Air, the M1 MacBook Pro has a lot of the same features and benefits going for it. I think the M1 MacBook Air is one of the best laptops out there, and so is the M1 MacBook Pro. Both of these laptops look pretty similar when sitting next to each other on a table, and even though the Air is technically lighter, it's just a 0.2 pound difference. So the Pro still has a small portable form factor that makes it ideal to take with you and use in a variety of portable scenarios, whether that's in the office, at school, or at your favorite coffee shop. Even on those small tables, the MacBook Pro should fit just fine, while some of the bigger 15 or 16-inch laptop options, well, they don't really do all too well, and you end up taking up like the whole table and it's hanging off like the side of it. The Pro also has a fantastic keyboard that offers a very pleasing typing experience and comes built in with Touch ID to make logging into your laptop or autofilling passwords, or, autofilling passwords in Safari, that much easier. It also has an excellent trackpad that is the best in the entire laptop world, with effortlessly smooth scrolling and gesture control. The display on the Pro is also sharp and supports a wide array of colors, which makes it great not only for a more pleasing display to look at, but also an important spec for people who need a more color-accurate display when working with photos and videos. The M1 is also super efficient and powerful, and while we'll talk about these details later in the video, there's just a lot of small improvements that the M1 brings, like amazing battery performance, a thermal design that doesn't heat up and leave the laptop scorching your lap, and even simple things like having the MacBook Pro instantly turn on as soon as you open the lid. All these little small everyday changes are made possible by the M1 chip, and they are just really nice to have. But everything I just described to you, you can also get on the cheaper M1 MacBook Air as well. So what makes the Pro such a compelling choice even as we await newer Macs on the horizon? First of all, price. Price is a huge factor when deciding what product to get, and right now at $1,300, the M1 MacBook Pro is probably the best all-around product when it comes to power and portability, at least in this M1 series. However, don't forget, the M1 MacBook Pro was released in November, so what that means right now is that if you're shopping at a third-party retailer like Amazon, you can often find sweetheart deals on the existing inventory of laptops. And as of the making of this video, I see M1 MacBook Pros going for $200 off their original price point. So for only $100 more than the MacBook Air, you're going to be getting a MacBook that has quite a few benefits. First of all, a brighter display. Now, in the grand scheme of things, a 400 versus 500 nit display might not be a huge deal for you, but if you're constantly working in bright spaces near a window or at a coffee shop or even outside, that extra 100 nits of brightness can make just enough of a difference between seeing your display and not seeing it. The brighter display also comes with something that is often overlooked when deciding between these two laptops. The MacBook Pro has better speakers and better microphones. The speakers on the Pro are richer and have a more distinct bass than the Air, which can sound flatter in comparison, and the Pro has better microphones, which again, it adds more richness and makes your voice sound more full, whereas just like the speaker comparison, the Air's microphones sound flatter in their voice response. This is a test recording on the M1 MacBook Pro, so you can hear the quality of the microphone. There's also other novelties like the touch bar. Now, yes, I know a lot of you out there don't like the touch bar, but just as many of you in the comment sections tell me you like the touch bar. And with recent rumors swirling around about the next M1X MacBook Pros, in all likelihood, the next M1X MacBook Pros are going to be dropping the touch bar and replacing it with the traditional row of function keys. And while I am personally mixed on the touch bar, I understand why some of you like it, and I also have certain uses for the touch bar that I really like resizing brush tools in my photo editor of choice, Affinity Photo. I just love how you can resize the brush tool with the touch bar slider, and it really does make using things like the selection tool a faster and even a more enjoyable experience. There's also bigger factors than this, and there's two that I can think of that are going to be important choices when buying this laptop. But before we talk about that, we need to talk about another important choice, and that is to make sure your banking information is always kept private and secure by using our sponsor for this video, Privacy.com. Privacy lets you buy things online with virtual cards, protecting your identity and bank information with creating a completely unique virtual card numbers. And this keeps your most sensitive and personal information, your literal bank account, free from prying eyes and never having to worry about giving out your bank information online, because with privacy you can control who can charge your card and even set limits for how often they can charge your card for things like monthly subscriptions, and even decide the exact amount of how much they can charge you so you are never overbilled or double charged for a service ever again. Privacy can also generate merchant card types that can be used again and again at your favorite online retailers, or single-use card options that can be used only once for that specific transaction, making sure that security breaches never put your personal banking information at risk. Best of all, you can try Privacy.com right now and get $5 just by being a Greg's Gadgets viewer by signing up through my link, privacy.com/Greg'sGadgets, or clicking the link in the description below. So make sure you check out Privacy.com, secure your banking information, and thank you so much to Privacy.com for sponsoring this video. All right, now I left you with a tease with two very important features that the M1 MacBook Pro has. The first one is power. Now, yes, I've told you for so long that the M1 MacBook Air is one of the best laptop choices you can make, and often people have kind of looked down on the M1 MacBook Pro as just being a more expensive version of this M1 MacBook Air. But that's kind of the wrong way of looking at it. The M1 MacBook Air is definitely the best value for most people because most people can't take advantage of the extra power that the M1 MacBook Pro has. Now, this power comes in two ways. First of all, the base version of the Air comes with just a 7-core GPU, while the base version of the MacBook Pro comes with an 8-core GPU. This might not sound like a huge difference, but in my testing with rendering and some more GPU-heavy tasks, that extra 1 core can make just the slightest difference, giving you a much-needed edge in performance. However, the bigger performance difference has nothing to do with the chip at all. It has to do with the fact that the M1 MacBook Pro has a fan to help cool off the M1 chip. Now, while I love the fact that the Air doesn't have a fan in it, basically making it an iPad in like a MacBook Pro form factor, the MacBook Pro having a fan makes a huge difference when pushing this machine to its limits. For example, in benchmarks, the MacBook Pro pulls ahead because it doesn't have to throttle down performance as fast as the MacBook Air does to cool down the chip. And in my video export test, the MacBook Pro exported 4K video to ProRes twice as fast as the M1 MacBook Air. The MacBook Pro took 3 minutes and 12 seconds compared to the Air finishing in at 6 minutes and 11 seconds. That is a huge difference when dealing with video export times. And if you're constantly exporting video or batch processing photos, bouncing or exporting music, building code, or rendering out 3D projects, that added speed is going to add up over time, and it's definitely going to be worth the additional money to go for the Pro. Another slight difference is the theoretical max battery life you can pull out of the Pro, which Apple gives an official crazy 20-hour rating to against their 18-hour rating for the Air. Now, while I don't run any battery drain tests because I feel like they really don't invoke real-world use, and there's just a bunch of different variety of ways to use your laptop, and that plays into the different ways that the laptop would drain battery, like the different apps you're using or even how bright you set your display. I do have to acknowledge that you can clearly see in some of these battery tests that the MacBook Pro does usually win by having around like an extra hour of battery life. That could be a hugely important factor to you, especially for those of you considering these laptops for more intensive tasks, where they're going to hit that battery even harder than what standard users would be using it for, like browsing the web or using social media, or, all those other things. So if you're video editing, an extra hour in Final Cut could mean the difference between finishing an entire video edit on this machine or having to search for the wall socket at Starbucks. I've used the MacBook Pro plenty of times in the 8 months that I've been using it, and I can't recall even one time on a full charge where I had to scramble and search for an outlet to finish even more demanding tasks. The battery life is really good on this machine, no matter what you're doing. Now, I think we covered a lot of reasons why this M1 MacBook Pro is really still an excellent choice 8 months later, and it will continue to offer what I think is the best performing Mac laptop in this price range. However, like I said at the start of this video, there are going to be some people who are better off waiting. Even though I think most people should get this M1 MacBook Pro, who are the people that should wait? Well, if you need more memory, you should wait. Because in my last video that I did on the M1 iMac, I finally ran into the limits of what a 16GB M1 machine can do, and I started to notice some slowdowns when editing longer video projects that were in 4K and over 30 minutes in length. Was it a deal breaker? No, the machine got the work done, and it wasn't like I wasn't able to edit the video, but there were speed bumps along the way, like waiting for the video to render or dealing with some memory swapping between the RAM and the solid-state drive that just added in some minor wait times. However, if you're dealing with even more footage than I am, or you just know you need more than 16GB of memory for whatever you have to do, then obviously you're going to want to wait and not get tempted to pull the trigger on this M1 MacBook Pro. That 16GB of memory is a limit for some people. There's also limitations in ports. This Mac comes with just 2 Thunderbolt ports, and it makes buying a Thunderbolt dock or an adapter pretty much a necessity for owning this computer. And there's also other limitations for the first gen M1 chip, like only being able to support one external display at a time. So if you work in a multiple monitor setup, well, obviously you're going to want to steer clear away from this M1 MacBook Pro. There's also other considerations like screen size. If you want a 16-inch MacBook Pro, well, this 13-inch display is just going to feel small to you. And if you need even more CPU power, and especially more GPU power, well, the next generation M1X machines should provide even more power than this M1 machine, specifically in that GPU area. So you're gonna want to wait for that too. With that being said, those M1X machines may have a lot of improvements, but they're also going to come at significantly higher price points. I would estimate that the M1X MacBook Pro would start around the same price range as the current 4-port Intel MacBook Pro, which Apple still sells, and could possibly be priced even higher with rumored components going into these machines. So at the lowest, I would expect a starting price of $1,799. So if you have a $1,300 budget, well, waiting for those M1X machines is ultimately going to prove pointless. So that is why I think you should go ahead and stop having that fear of missing out feeling, because the M1 MacBook Pro is a fantastic laptop. And for a lot of you, it's still going to be the right choice over the even newer theoretical M1X machines. But that's just what I think. Please let me know in the comments below. Do you think buying an M1 MacBook Pro is a good idea right now, with all the discounts going on, or do you still think waiting is the better choice? Also, if you like this video, show your support by leaving me a like, and if you aren't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? The M1X version of Greg with his sculpted body, flawless hair, and also significant GPU power increases. Well, let me tell you, that Greg isn't coming, so you might as well just subscribe to the M1 version of this Greg, and yeah, hit the subscribe button. Check out the affiliate links in the description below as well if you want to try and find that $200 deal off the M1 MacBook Pro. I believe it was over on Amazon. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.